Part 2. Revelations. Chapter 38. The Survivors. Beatrice Byte Beaufort knows that she can no longer trust her mind. Too often now it fails or deceives her. But she is sure, almost, that this place she is looking at is the place of her birth, her home, the Beaufort Farm and Estate. But it cannot be. Beaufort Farm and Estate is lush and verdant. Something is always growing or being harvested. Beaufort Farm and Estate is always busy with people and livestock. This great, great expanse of dust fields and mud huts cannot be Beaufort Farm and Estate. Therefore, her mind must be playing tricks on her, again. And yet, those blue hills, hazy and distant, look so familiar. And the skeletal house they are driving towards now could be the house she grew up in, if it were stately. But it is not. Kookie had told her they were going to the Beaufort Farm and Estate, so why is she taking her somewhere else? "When will we get to Beaufort?" Beatrice asks Kookie, who is leaning over her steering wheel and squinting at the dust, trying to see the road ahead. Kookie looks away from the road and smiles at her sympathetically, which is the only way that Kookie smiles at her now. Kookie squeezes her hand briefly before returning her focus to the obscured road ahead. Whatever her faults may be, you cannot ask for a truer friend than Kookie, Beatrice thinks. And just then a field of sunflowers bursts into view. "Home!" Beatrice beamingly exclaims. "Beaufort!" Valentine is well aware that the situation in which he currently finds himself is far from ideal. When he had imagined this moment, he had seen himself driving up to the Beaufort Farm and Estate with a few people, Vida de Villiers, Justina Nxumalo, and perhaps a member of the Masugu clan, probably, but not preferably, the son. But now here he is, at the head of what can only be called a convoy. The Masugus in their entirety, of course, had to come. Kookie Carmichael and Beatrice Byte Beaufort had to come. Even Begitembe Nyati had to come, but he at least generously gave a ride to Menenhle Tikiti and Mordecai Katiro, who also had to come. A procession of 4 cars, a cavalcade, a column. Valentine hopes that he has parked his car in the right place. In front of him is a skeletal house, a crumbling edifice that is held together by ivy and the memory of its former grandeur. There is absolutely no sign of life. He and his passengers, Vida and Justina, alight one by one and stand in the barren dustiness, at a loss as to what to do next. They watch the other cars park. That was one bumpy and dusty road, Valentine thinks, as he looks back at the long, thin stretch of patchily tarred road that has been eaten away by years of neglect. Almost imperceptibly, a torn lace curtain moves behind one of the windows, proof of life. A few moments later, the front door yawns open and a man comes out. Even though he is small in stature and still standing in the distance, Valentine can tell that the man has an axe to grind. He is probably also carrying some kind of weapon in the hand he has behind his back. "I will handle this," Valentine says to the others, sotto voce. "Private property!" the man shouts, not breaking his stride. "I don't doubt it for a minute," Valentine says. "Is this the Beaufort Farm and Estate?" "Fair and square," the man says, finally coming to a stop a few meters away from Valentine. "Is that what you're calling the place now? Fair and square?" "We are here, fair and square. We buy property from Miss Beatrice. We don't land grab." "Oh, I see. So this is the Beaufort Farm and Estate." "Private property. You are trespassing. Go now." "Sir, we mean you no trouble." "Then why you bring white man?" "White man?" Valentine asks. He looks at his fellow travelers. Of course, Vida. "Oh, him. That's not a white man. That's—" "Jesus?" the man asks, excitedly moving forward. "Jesus, is it you?" Vida frowns at the man. "It is you. It really is you," the man says, reaching out both hands to Vida. He realizes that he has a gun in one of his hands. He hesitates, looks at Valentine and then at Vida before placing the gun in his waistband. "You don't remember me, do you?" the little man says, disappointment plain in his voice. Valentine immediately notices that he has done away with his broken English. Goliath? Vida asks. The brightest smile beams shockingly on the little man's face. You do remember me. I thought you would not recognize me because I've grown, Goliath says, proudly playing with a scattering of beard on his chin. You haven't grown much, Vida says. Goliath laughs long and heartily at this. Such are the challenges of life, he says, as he brings his laughter to a close. So you're living here now? Vida asks. Yes, Goliath says. I found that city life no longer suited. Genie is the reason why we came to settle here, Goliath explains. She talked of this place, about the sunflowers. She made it seem so enchanted, I had to see it for myself. I had seen sunflower seeds, you understand, greyish black ugly things they are, but she made the sunflowers so beautiful in my imagination, I had to come and see it, and I did, years ago. Came, saw, loved the place. She was right. It is a beautiful flower. I promised myself that when the time came for the survivors to settle, we would settle here. But when we arrived, we found that the war veterans had already settled here. You can see the results. Goliath gestures towards the mud huts standing starkly in the barren fields. We are not part of that resettlement scheme. We bought this patch of land fair and square. He rubs his thumb and forefinger together. Money. Remember how tourists loved taking our picture with our street dweller statue? Foreign currency. Black market. We started as small fish, then grew, eventually becoming too big for the pond. The people trading on the streets nowadays are absolutely ruthless, unprincipled and undisciplined. They are an undesirable element. They are too hungry to care, not at all like us, a different animal altogether. Remember how we used to conduct ourselves with dignity? We had a code of ethics. But now the streets have gone to the dogs. So we decided it was time to settle. Bought the land. Direct purchase from Beatrice Bite Beaufort herself. Fair and square. Just then, Beatrice and Kuki alight from Kuki's car, as do the Masugus and Begitemba, Menenhle and Mordecai from their respective cars. Ah, Miss Beatrice, here she is. You can ask her about the squareness and fairness of it, Goliath says, looking slightly confused by Beatrice Bite Beaufort's visit, but standing his ground all the same. The vacant look in Beatrice's eyes and the benign smile on her lips let everyone know that there is no point in asking her anything. The front door opens hesitantly and cautiously. Men and women come forward, slowly but with determination. The other survivors, Goliath says, proudly motioning towards the motley crew. You won't believe who I've got here, Goliath says to the survivors. Jesus, he says, responding to his own question. Remember Jesus? How could we forget Jesus, one of the women says, as a baby hungrily sucks at her breast. Vida recognizes her as the girl he once tried to save from prostituting herself to the Indian businessman. That's the wife and child, Goliath says, trying not to sound proud. He looks past Vida expectantly. Speaking of wives, where is Genie? We were told that she was here, Valentine says. Here? She is definitely not here. We were told that a body was found here, Vida says. A body? That was Genie? Goliath points towards the war veterans' mud huts. There was much ado a few days ago. They are always harvesting bones, human remains. That is why they will not let us plough the fields. But a few days ago they claimed they found a fresh body in the sunflower field. We didn't believe them. And now you say this body belongs to Genie? We'll have to see it for ourselves to determine that, Valentine says, as he makes his way towards the mud huts. You'll need us to ease your passage, Goliath says, rushing to the head of the group. They don't take kindly to strangers. Although there is no love lost between us, we at least have become familiar to them. On their circuitous route to the mud huts, Goliath leads them past a series of dilapidated and debilitated yellow-grey concrete houses with stained and corrugated asbestos roofs. Over the year, the compound houses have come to lean on each other, and that is the only reason that they are still standing now. Where are all the people who used to live here? Justina asks. When we came here, there were no people, Goliath's wife says. How can a place have no people? Chased away by the war veterans, most probably, Goliath says. I think it is HIV, AIDS. Once it enters a small place such as this, Goliath's wife says as she lets her voice trail off, you should see the number of bones and bodies the war veterans have dug up. So it is just as Justina has long suspected. On that nightmarish day, the soldiers with the red berets brought more with them than just their hatred and AK-47s. She has never told anyone what had happened to her and what had happened to Mrs. Khadebe, what Mr. Khadebe was forced to watch, what had happened before she was ordered to put the rat poison in the Khadebe's tea and forced to watch them drink it. Instead of speaking the unspeakable, she has chosen instead to cloak herself in shame. As they gang-raped, shot, and pillaged their way through the compound, they had also, probably unbeknownst to themselves, found another way to decimate the compound. It did not have to be all of them who carried the disease, just one. The result would have been the same. And now to find out that Genie too? But no, this is a thought that Justina cannot reconcile herself to. Genie had only been 9 years old at the time. The soldiers could not have... But what if they had, and Genie had chosen to remain silent? To the grave. Tattered and torn, tall and proud, war veterans, carrying battle-weary AK-47s. Are you here about the body? The war veterans ask. Yes, Valentine replies. The war veterans lead the way, past the mud huts, over the barren fields, through the sunflower field. The sunflower field grows of its own volition, has its own rhyme and reason. Finally they arrive at a cold storage unit. They heave open its heavy door and reveal stacks and stacks of neatly arranged skeletons. The dumbfounded awe that then fills the room is akin to reverence. They are so neatly arranged, Valentine says. So tidy. We were very careful, the war veterans say. They seem to be almost catalogued. Yes, they are, the war veterans say neutrally. There are the bones from the war. There are the bones from what happened after the war. The bones from HIV and AIDS. How did you differentiate the bones? Valentine asks, clearly fascinated. Coins. In the 70s and 80s, almost everyone died with change in their pockets. Not so in the 90s. This is a job well done, Valentine says. The war veterans allow themselves to feel the pride of the compliment. It is all we have done since we arrived. Excavate. That is why the fields still lie fallow. But we thought it was the best way to handle so many bones, with care. Yes, of course, Valentine says, with care. The body is this way, the war veterans say, as they lead the way into the deeper and darker recesses of the cold storage room. A streak of sunlight, shining through a high, dust-covered window, falls across the body of Imogen Zula Nyoni lying on a metal slab. Quieted, unbreachable, at peace. A truth inescapable. We knew who she was as soon as we saw her, the war veterans say. We would know the daughter of Golide Gomere anywhere. We do not know how she got to the sunflower field. We just woke up in the morning, and there she was. She must have been alive, at least for some time, because her feet were burrowed into the soil. We should take comfort in the fact that she chose her own ending, Justina says. A profound silence settles the room. No, Kuki says firmly, breaking the silence. No, Kuki repeats, backing away from Genie's body. No! She has no idea what she is denying or refusing. She was my friend. Why choose to lie at a moment like this, Cookie wonders. She was never friends with Genie. Beatrice is the one who was friends with Genie, and Cookie never quite understood their friendship. "She is my friend," Cookie hears herself repeat. Why does she, Cookie Carmichael, née Sedgwick, and once upon a time Coetzee, need to have people believe that she and Genie were friends? As dusk descends upon the Beaufort farm and estate, the visitors prepare to leave, with Genie's body, which has been gently wrapped in a mosquito net and placed at the back of Valentine's jeep. Marcus looks over the compound again, trying to imagine the life he would have had if his parents had not come to take him away. He cannot. Had his parents not come to take him away, he would not have had much of a life. Home. Where has it been all this time? Marcus thinks of the world atlas that Genie sent him, the one that is safely secreted in a suitcase in the home he has made with Esme. He sees the page that is besmirched by a handprint that is reddish-brown, blood. The handprint is small, that of a child, that of a girl-child, Genie. It is in that moment that Marcus realizes that he has been holding on to something that Genie let go of a long time ago. A boy shyly walks up to Marcus and hands him a photograph. "I found it in the ceiling," the boy says, not quite sure what to do with the silence around him. "We used to talk about how we would hide in the ceiling with the things and the people we loved best, if strangers we didn't trust came to visit," Marcus says, his voice breaking as he looks at the photograph. A young Marcus and a young Genie are smiling at him from the interior of brown car. Both of them are missing their 2 front teeth. They look unbelievably happy. Marcus smiles at them through the years, but his smile is uncertain, because he does not remember having the picture taken. Justina Nxumalo takes the photograph from Marcus. "We will always remember what happened here," she says, as she remembers Genie climbing into the ceiling to retrieve her suitcase the day they both left the Beaufort farm and estate. But we can never truly know what happened here. Chapter 39. Genie. Genie chooses this particular moment, with the survivors as her witnesses, to fly away on a giant pair of silver wings, and leave her heart behind to calcify into the most precious and beautiful something that the world has ever seen. As the survivors watch her ascend, she experiences love as the release of a promise long held, and then the clouds. Chapter 40. Valentine. Valentine watches as the man himself struggles to tie the knot of his bow tie. Slightly embarrassed to see the man himself fail for the 3rd time, Valentine lets his eyes wander around the opulent and stately room. It is a room that evidently understands that it houses a very powerful man. Its deep emerald greens and ruby mahoganies are awe-inspiring. But it is also a room that is staid, with the stale scent of decades-old smoke on everything. The only thing that has changed, really, is that instead of Emile Coetzee occupying the room, the man himself does. And the only original thing that the man himself has contributed in his entire 30-something years of occupying this room is not even truly original. He changed the name of this particular branch of the state from the Organization of Domestic Affairs to the Organization, which is what most people had always referred to it as anyway. Soon after he took office, he watched with satisfaction as all the stationery was changed to reflect his contribution. And then he sat back, relaxed, and did exactly the same things that Emile Coetzee had done in that room. "Don't tell anyone this, but I usually get the clip-ons. Saves one all the fuss," the man himself says, bringing Valentine's attention back to him. "But today is a very special occasion. I thought I should go all out, as they say. A funeral, just the sort of thing that makes people think that one cares deeply about things," the man himself says, his eyes never once leaving Valentine's. He finally manages to knot his bow tie. "Yes, sir," Valentine says. He is very uncomfortable. He has never liked wearing suits, and this one fits him a little too snugly. He has the desperate urge to shift in his seat, readjust his jacket, and loosen his collar, but he does not do any of these things because they would be a sure sign to the man himself that he is uncomfortable. The man himself comes to sit at the edge of the desk, next to Valentine. In his hands he carries 2 cigars. He offers one to Valentine. "I don't smoke, sir, thank you." "You don't have to smoke a cigar. You smoke a cigar to make a statement." "Thank you all the same, sir." "You smoke as a form of congratulations," the man himself says as he puts the cigar in Valentine's front pocket and pats it in place. "And congratulations are in order, aren't they?" "Are they, sir?" "Of course they are," the man himself says, lighting his cigar. "You pulled it off, Valentine." "Pulled it off, sir?" Come, Valentine. I am head of domestic affairs. I'm the chief intelligence officer. I know." "You know, sir? Know what?" "That Imogen put you up to all of this." "Up to all of what, sir?" "Must say, I didn't expect it of you. You are such a good foot soldier, so invested in doing your job well. So what was it? You loved her, I suppose?" Valentine decides not to respond to that. "Hit it on the head, have I? Of course you loved her. Why else would you do it?" The man himself scoffs. "Complete waste of time, your being in love with Imogen. She was completely devoted to that de Villiers chap. So what good did it do you? You'll likely lose your job, perhaps even lose worse over this, which of course is why I've let you get this far. So that you understand the nothingness of what you've done. You know, to the rest of the nation, you're just a group of crazy people intent on burying an empty box. That is all they see, the emptiness of a gesture. Was it worth it?" "Yes, sir." The man himself is taken aback by Valentine's response, but recovers quickly. "And all because of love?" "Love of a kind, I suppose, but not the kind you imagine." Love. Was there another word to express what Valentine felt the day he read the story of Golide Gomere in the newspaper? There was a man building an aeroplane, and suddenly all things were possible. Valentine's family laughed at the idea that an African, an albino at that, thought that he could build a plane. Valentine did not laugh. Valentine loved the idea that flight was possible for someone like him. Valentine believed. "You really thought a woman like that could love a man like you? What really saddens me, Valentine, is how absolutely unoriginal you are." "Why did you do it, sir?" "Do what?" the man himself asks, frowning. He is aware that there has been a shift in the power dynamics of the conversation, and aware, more terrifyingly, that he does not know when the shift occurred. "Was it because he was capable of flight?" The man himself laughs mirthlessly. "I see I did not teach you well. It does not matter why. It never matters why. You do it because you can. I did it because I could. Power, that is what it gives you. That ability." Valentine smiles. The man himself's laughter dies abruptly. He is done playing games. "I did it because a man like me does not let a man like Golide Gomere build an aeroplane. I did it because power is a very delicate thing." "Thank you for telling me why, sir. Now I'll tell you why I helped her. Because she was someone who had lived a life that mattered. They all had." The man himself's frown deepens. He is evidently waiting for Valentine to explain further. "That is all there is to it. It really is that simple. Her life mattered. She was never just a statistic. She was always more than just a tragic life. She was a precious and beautiful something. She deserved to choose her own ending." Valentine reaches in his pocket and retrieves a precious and beautiful something and holds it between his thumb and forefinger. 18. We counted. Genie made 18. This is what happens to the hearts of those who believe and followed Golide Gumede. 17 died on the 22nd of December in 1987. 17 of these were found on the Beaufort farm and estate in a disused well. Genie made 18, and yet you have one more of these, a 19th. I suspect that you actually have 2. I don't expect you to tell me the truth, but I'll ask anyway. What did you do to Golide Gumede and Elizabeth Nyoni? What does it matter, since you know I will not tell you the truth? Valentine stands up and smiles. Beaufort farm and estate belongs to the survivors. They will decide what to do with the precious and beautiful somethings. The man himself throws his hands up in resignation. I don't understand you, Valentine. I don't understand you. You too would stand to benefit if we took over the land. I don't understand you at all. It's all right, sir. I understand you perfectly, Valentine says. He walks away, making sure to close the door firmly behind him, leaving the man himself in the stately, staid and stale room, the seat of power. Chapter 41. The Real Revolutionaries. The denizens of the city go about surviving their day-to-day lives. Street vendors sell and hawk their wares. Cars careen at neck-breaking speeds, not because they have anywhere particular to get in a hurry, but because they were built that way. The cars stop only to buy calling cards, newspapers, vegetables and fruits, all of dubious worth. Pedestrians walk with purpose, even though they know that all they will find at their journey's end is disappointment. The hearse moves to the side of the road to let a wedding convoy pass by. The wedding convoy zigzags on both sides of the street, dancing with danger and cheating death, horns blowing loudly. With the wedding convoy safely in the distance, the hearse resumes its journey. When I started this business in the 60s, I was lucky if I worked on 1 body per week, the undertaker says from the funereal confines of the hearse. We had 3 trades back then: the white trade, the colored trade, the African trade. You were supposed to take care of your own kind, so I was only allowed to do the colored trade. If I got to do 3 funerals in a week, then that was a very good week. I could actually do it all on my own. Went to pick up the body at the mortuary, brought it here to prepare it, held the viewing. My brothers put together a contraption for me that lifted the body from the gurney to the slab, and from the slab to the dressing bed, and from the dressing bed to the coffin. So I really could do it all alone. Needed help putting the coffin in the hearse, but family members usually preferred to do that themselves. Took the body to the cemetery. The chaps from the city council had the grave already dug. Family members helped lower the coffin into the earth, and I always helped shovel the soil onto the coffin. I watched as crying family members walked away. I watched as the chaps from the city council left with shovels resting on their shoulders. I was always the last one to leave, paying my last respects to a body that I had come to know intimately. During the war, things heated up, and I found myself doing anywhere between 7 and 10 bodies a week. There were too many people dying for the trades to really matter. The whites still primarily took care of their own folks, but occasionally would handle a wealthy African. The Africans still dealt exclusively with their own kind because there was no shortage of black bodies during the war. As a colored man, I was permitted to work on Africans and indigent whites as well. I will admit that things got a bit hairy, but I could still do things on my own. I just no longer had the time to help with the burial. I was often the first one to leave. But I always stayed until the coffin had been lowered into the earth. In the mid-80s, I had to take on an assistant because all of a sudden I was doing 20 to 30 funerals per week. I stopped going to the cemetery altogether. I left all that to the assistant. I thought I was overwhelmed then, but now Mendelssohn's funeral home and parlor is like a factory. I have 20 employees, all thanks to HIV and AIDS. The city has gone to pot. The country has gone to pot. Factories closed, tourism done. 80% unemployment, no money in pockets, no money in bank accounts. Yet I am rolling in it. Death is the only lucrative business. I have not touched a dead body in over 10 years, but I have money sticking to my fingers because of dead bodies. I never thought I would say this, but there is such a thing as too much death. And I say this as an undertaker. All this death cannot be healthy for us as a community, a city, a country. It cannot be healthy. The undertaker gestures towards something on the pavement. You don't see that every day. Time was people used to stop when a hearse passed by. Remember that? Cars would stop, bicycles would stop, pedestrians would stop. Men would take off their hats, place them over their hearts, pay their last respects. Nobody does that anymore. I suppose they are all too busy burying their own dead. No, you definitely don't see that anymore. Once upon a time, that is how it was done, with respect. Vida looks in the direction that the undertaker's nod has indicated. There, across the street, amid all the hustle and bustle and toing and froing of the streets, stands a man, a vagabond to most. He has removed his hat from his head and placed it over his heart. A newspaper is carefully folded and placed under his arm. Vida knows that both the easy and cryptic crossword puzzles of that newspaper have been filled out neatly and correctly. "Stop the car," Vida says. "I'm leading the procession. There's too much traffic." "Please stop the car. I know that man." Vida exits the hearse and runs across the street, well aware that the man may not remember him. "David," Vida says. The man carefully unfolds the newspaper under his arm. The headline reads, "Imogen Zula Nyoni flies away." "I am sorry for your loss," David says. These are the only words Vida remembers David ever having uttered. It is David who walks him back to the hearse. It is David who sits with him next to the coffin, on top of which rests an effusive bouquet of flowers meticulously arranged by Menentle. Genie's suitcase is in the coffin. In it, among her childhood clothes, are Penelope and Specs, and Blue's baby blue slippers. With David beside him, Vida opens the coffin and retrieves the suitcase. He reaches into his breast pocket, removes the sunglasses, and gives them to David. There is courage in letting Genie go. There is courage, too, in not letting Genie go entirely. They have done it, Marcus thinks, as he watches the soil slowly cover the coffin, shovelful by shovelful. They have finally let Genie go. Marcus wonders, and not for the first time, if Genie ever belonged to them. Belonging, is it an emotion? Is it a way of being? Is it an action one takes? He had felt that he belonged to Genie all these years, but now he is not sure if it was something he felt, something he was, or something he did. He looks at his family, his father, his mother, his sister, and his grandmother. Crystal's head is resting on their mother's shoulder, her eyes closed. All of them look bereft and exhausted. It is the look they have had ever since Dingaan told them what he did in 1987. They are all silent. The silence has become a familiar companion. He sees rather than feels a hand in his. He looks at the owner of that hand, his wife, Esme. This is his family, fragile. This is where he belongs. Marcus finds himself leading the procession out of the cemetery, but he does not feel like heading home. Home, the house with the cracked walls, the yard with the felled jacaranda trees, the family with no Genie. He looks at his family and is gripped by a sudden sense of urgency. There is a place that he must see. There is a place that his family must see. He feels that they have to see it now more than ever. Instinctively he knows that seeing this place could be the very thing to strengthen them. He changes course. To his surprise, the rest of the funeral procession follows him. Menentle Tikiti, Mordecai Gatiro, Justina Nklumalo, Valentine Tanaka, Begitemba Nyati, Kuki Carmichael, Beatrice Byte Beaufort, Dr. Priska Mambo, the survivors, the war veterans, Stephanos and Matilda, David the puzzle solver, Mr. Mendelssohn the undertaker, and Vida de Villiers. By the time the procession arrives at the Victoria Falls and stands at the banks of the mighty Zambezi River, a new dawn is breaking. They all stand there watching the sun do what it has always done, rise from the east, full of promise. A man, a very tall man with glasses, wearing a cap and a loose shirt that declares him to be a very rare thing nowadays, a tourist, stands a respectable distance from the motley group. He is aware that they are waiting for something to happen, perhaps some traditional African ritual that he will luckily be able to capture on the expensive-looking camera that dangles hopefully on his chest. The man blinks once, twice, thrice. "Crystal?" the man says hesitantly, obviously not wanting to disturb their peace. Crystal turns around and blinks at him. "Crystal Masuku," the man says more assuredly. "Xander Dangerfield?" Crystal asks incredulously. "You remember," Xander says, obviously pleased. "What are you doing here?" Crystal asks, still incredulous. "I thought I should see it for myself." "See what?" Xander is about to answer, then he puts up a finger. "Wait." He starts patting his pockets. "Aha!" he says triumphantly, as he retrieves something from his back pocket. It is a postcard of the Victoria Falls. On the back, in Genie's handwritings, are the words, "Remember, there will be the time of the swimming elephants." How could she have known? Crystal asks. Her hands are trembling. Xander blinks at her. "Oh, never mind how she knew. She knew. And you are here now," Crystal says, leading him to the people waiting on the banks. And that is when they appear with their formidable grace, majestic, a herd of elephants raising dust beautifully in the early morning savannah sunlight. The bull at the head of the herd raises his trunk and trumpets terrifically. All the elephants come to a gradual standstill on one side of the Victoria Falls. And then the elephant dives in close to where the waters plunge over the edge. Every breath is held in unison. The ancient river and the mighty animal in perfect harmony. A rite of passage made sacred by its sheer audacity. There is a wonder to it all, the possibility of the seemingly impossible. And there's this feeling that you get, a knowing. You become aware of your place in the world. You understand that in the greater scheme of things, you are but a speck, a tiny speck, and that is enough. There is freedom, beauty even, in that kind of knowledge. It is the kind of knowledge that finally quiets you. It is the kind of knowledge that allows you to fly. You have to experience it for yourself. Overhead, an aeroplane flies. Its silver wings flash in the golden sky.